You hover your thumb over the delete button, watching the group chat bubble, feeling the sudden, cold urge to sever the digital cord. Your notifications sit unread, a mounting pile of expectations, while you stare at the wall, practicing the art of becoming a ghost. They see a profile picture, a static memory of your presence, while you are already miles away, drifting into a silent, chosen void. You ghost the world not out of malice, but out of a desperate, quiet need to stop the noise from vibrating in your bones. If you wish to trace the footsteps of those who vanish into thin air, subscribe to authorize your access to the vanishing files. But when the screen goes black, do you feel the relief of freedom, or the sudden, sharp chill of being completely forgotten? Society looks at your empty chair and calls it flakiness, or perhaps a lack of commitment, never seeing the internal fire that burned you out. They assume you are being dramatic, or playing games with their emotions, missing the absolute exhaustion that makes every social yes feel like a lie. You wear the mask of the elusive friend, the mysterious traveler who comes and goes, while inside you are just trying to find a place to breathe. The friction inside is a grinding of gears, the social obligation to be on clashing with the primal instinct to hide in the dark and reset. People think you are being cold when you stop responding, but your silence is actually a white flag, a surrender to the overwhelming weight of connection. You laugh at the party, the perfect guest for an hour, while secretly calculating exactly how many minutes remain before you can disappear without being noticed. The mask is a polished surface of casual indifference, hiding the fact that every conversation feels like a slow drain on your very soul and spirit. They think you are a free spirit who doesn't need anyone, but your independence is often a shield against the fear of being too much for them. Underneath the sudden absence, you are sitting in the quiet, wondering if anyone actually noticed the specific moment you decided to slip through the side door. This invisible barrier keeps you safe from the demands of others, but it also creates a vacuum where your true identity starts to blur and fade. Your disappearance is misread as a lack of care, a betrayal of the group, while you are simply trying to keep your own heart from shattering. If you have felt the weight of this specific silence, you're not the only one listening to these words. If the exit is always your favorite part of the room, what happens when you finally close the door and find yourself on the other side? Your brain has categorized social interaction as a high-cost expenditure, where the neural tax of maintaining a presence eventually exceeds your available mental and emotional currency. The hidden mechanism is a survival instinct that views group dynamics as a predatory environment, triggering a biological flight response that prioritizes isolation over the perceived danger of performance. You are not simply avoiding people, you are undergoing a social shutdown, a protective reboot that occurs when the amygdala senses an incoming wave of external expectations. This cognitive choice is a radical act of self-preservation, a way to reclaim your autonomy by stripping away the layers of obligation that feel like tightening, suffocating coils. By vanishing, you interrupt the cycle of social feedback, effectively silencing the internal critic that judges every word, gesture, and expression you offer to the watching world. The brain chooses this path because the perceived risk of being misunderstood or rejected is mitigated by the absolute certainty of being alone and entirely unobserved. Your mind treats the social circle like a burning room, where the only logical response is to find the nearest exit before the smoke of small talk fills your lungs. This pattern is a refusal to be defined by the gaze of others, a desperate attempt to find the core of your being without the static of external influence. You become a shadow in your own history, deleting the digital breadcrumbs of your existence to ensure that no one can track the trajectory of your withdrawal. The brain favors this sudden exit because it provides an immediate drop in cortisol, replacing the frantic buzz of social anxiety with a cold, hollow peace. It is a recurring loop of relief and regret, where the safety of the void is balanced against the growing realization that you are becoming a phantom. If the mind finds peace in the disappearance, why does the silence eventually start to sound like a scream that no one is left to hear? In the quiet office, you pack your bag 10 minutes early, slipping out the back stairwell to avoid the casual happy hour invite you cannot face. You stand in the middle of a heated argument, but your mind has already left the building, watching the scene from a distant, cold, and unreachable height. In the grocery store line, you see an old friend 3 aisles over, and you instantly turn your cart, abandoning your items to avoid the forced greeting. The late-night text sits on your screen like a physical weight, and you watch the notification disappear, knowing you will never find the energy to reply. At a wedding, you spend 40 minutes in the bathroom stall, pressing your forehead against the cool metal door just to hear your own heartbeat again. You delete your social media accounts on a Tuesday afternoon, not for a grand reason, but because the sight of other people's lives feels like glass. When a group dinner is planned, you wait until the last possible second to send the "not feeling well" text, feeling a surge of pure, illicit joy. In a crowded bar, you find the one dark corner where the music is a dull hum, watching the dancers as if they were specimens in a jar. You walk through your own neighborhood with headphones on, even when no music is playing, just to signal a boundary that no one should dare cross. During a Zoom call, you keep your camera off, pretending the connection is weak while you stare at your own reflection in the black, glass screen. You are the one who changes your phone number without telling the extended family, creating a clean slate that feels like a cold, fresh winter morning. The world is a stage where you have forgotten your lines, and you find that the only way to save the play is to leave the theater. You find yourself sitting in a parked car for an hour after work, staring at the dashboard, because the transition back into your life feels impossible. Your life is a series of strategic retreats, a gallery of empty spaces where you used to be, leaving your friends to wonder where you went. You are always the ghost of the feast, the one who left before the cake was cut. But what happens when the ghost wants to come home? The origin of your flight lies in a childhood where your presence was only valued if it served the emotional needs of those who held the power. You learned that to be seen was to be used, and the only way to protect your inner world was to make yourself physically or emotionally invisible. Evolutionary biology suggests the solitary creature avoids the trap by recognizing the scent of the cage before the door has even begun to swing shut. Your brain developed a hypersensitive social battery, a survival mechanism that interprets the energy of others as a literal threat to your own vital resources. This aha moment reveals that your disappearance is not an act of laziness, but a primitive defense against the perceived extinction of your own personality. You were the child who hid in books or under blankets, finding a sanctuary in the places where no one could ask you to be something else. This avoidance became your primary coping strategy, a way to regulate your nervous system when the demands of the tribe became a deafening, constant roar. The dorsal vagal complex in your body triggers a shutdown state, a biological freezing that makes the exit feel like the only path to actual survival. You chose the path of the phantom because being a ghost is safer than being a target, and being gone is easier than being profoundly misunderstood. The deep psychology of this behavior is a search for an untainted self, a desperate attempt to find who you are without the mirrors of others. It is an ancient instinct for the overwhelmed, a way to reset the internal clock before the gears are stripped by the friction of human contact. If this retreat is your only way to breathe, why does the air in your solitude always taste like the dust of a house long abandoned? Your disappearance creates a vacuum of confusion, leaving a trail of why in the minds of people who genuinely believe they were your friends. They interpret your silence as a personal failure or a hidden grudge, unaware that your exit has absolutely nothing to do with their specific actions. By vanishing, you force others to narrate your story for you, allowing them to fill the void with their own insecurities and perceived slights. They feel the sudden coldness of your absence like a physical draft, wondering if the warmth they shared with you was ever actually real at all. Friends begin to stop reaching out, not out of anger, but out of a weary acceptance that your bridge is permanently closed for repairs. In relationships, your partner may feel like they are dating a shadow, a person who is physically present but emotionally packed and waiting to leave. You drain the trust of the circle by refusing to provide the closure of a goodbye, leaving a wound that never quite heals for those left behind. This quiet exit can be a form of unintentional cruelty, a way to exert power by being the one who decides when the connection is dead. People begin to guard their hearts against you, knowing that your presence is a temporary loan that could be recalled at any sudden, silent moment. The ripple effect is a slow thinning of your social reality, a world where the people who knew you best become strangers with old memories. You become a legend of inconsistency, a person who was once there and then simply wasn't, a mystery that people eventually get tired of solving. If you have felt the weight of this specific silence, you're not the only one listening to these words. If the world has learned to live without your voice, do you still have the power to make them listen when you finally return? Your ability to vanish is a masterclass in emotional autonomy, a rare refusal to be held hostage by the hollow expectations of a performative society. You possess the sacred gift of self-sufficiency, an internal landscape so vast and rich that you do not require the constant validation of the crowd. While others are drowning in the desperate need to be seen, you are the master of the shadow, finding peace in the quiet corners of existence. This trait allowed you to preserve your essence when the world tried to mold you, turning you into a sovereign soul who answers only to yourself. Your disappearance is a radical act of honesty, a refusal to offer a fake smile when your spirit is demanding the sanctuary of total, deep silence. You notice the patterns of the herd from your distant vantage point, seeing the truth of human behavior that is hidden by the dust of the fray. The strength of the phantom is the power of the reset, the ability to shed the skin of the past and begin again with a clean slate. You are the keeper of your own energy, a guardian who knows that your presence is a precious resource that should never be squandered on the trivial. If your solitude is a temple of self-discovery, why do the gods you find there never speak your name back to you in the dark? The price of your vanishing is a slow erosion of your history, a life lived in fragments where nothing ever has the chance to take deep root. You become a stranger to your own timeline, looking back at a series of half-finished stories and people who once loved a version of you. This behavior steals your future by ensuring you are never present for the harvest, having fled the field long before the seeds could truly grow. You risk becoming a permanent outsider, a person who knows everyone's face but whose own face is a blurring memory in the minds of others. The dark side of the ghost is the growing coldness of the heart, a detachment that makes it harder to feel anything but the relief of leaving. You carry the weight of unlived potential, the brilliance, and the love that stayed locked inside because the door to the world was shut too tight. By refusing to stay, you deny yourself the transformation that only comes through the friction and the heat of long-term, difficult, and messy human connection. The disappearance becomes a habit of cowardice, a way to avoid the hard work of being known and the terrifying vulnerability of being truly seen. If you are always the one who leaves before the end, how will you ever know if the story was actually meant to be yours? The path forward is not a forced return to the center of the stage, but a gradual mastery of the thresholds between your world and theirs. You must begin to view your social energy as a managed resource, learning to leave the party with a graceful word rather than a silent, haunting escape. By practicing the art of the brief appearance, you can maintain the threads of connection without feeling the suffocating pressure to stay until the lights dim. You must learn to trust that those who value you would rather have a fragment of your presence than the total, cold vacuum of your sudden absence. Creating clear boundaries for your withdrawal allows you to disappear for a time without burning the bridges you worked so hard to build through the years. The goal is to transform your flight into a rhythmic retreat, a sustainable cycle of engagement and solitude that honors both your heart and your community. You are a deep well of individual truth, and sharing even a single drop of that water can keep the garden of your relationships from turning to dust. The future belongs to those who know how to walk in the sun without losing the cool, quiet peace they found in the shadows of the night. If you have felt the weight of this specific silence, you're not the only one listening to these words. If the door back to the world is unlocked from the inside, are you brave enough to turn the handle and step into the light? The file is nearly closed, but the pattern of the vanishing soul remains a lingering question in the hearts of every circle you have ever touched. You are the master of the exit, the one who knows that the most powerful thing you can do is simply cease to be where you are expected. The world will continue its frantic dance, but your absence will always be the silent beat that gives the music its most haunting, mysterious depth. This documentation of the ghost is a mirror, a chance to decide if you are hiding from the world or merely searching for yourself in the quiet. The disappearance is not an end, but a transition into a space where you can finally hear your own thoughts without the static of the crowd. This is not judgment. It's a pattern. Subscribe if you want to recognize them before they recognize you.